Alright, good morning people of YouTube. So we are back again today to talk about something that Bandai has announced that they will be doing in the future. Typically don't bring you guys news videos like this. I typically leave this to other Digitubers, but this felt kind of important. So Bandai said today, or a couple days ago, that starting in October of this year, they are going to be introducing blocks to their cards. So what this means is any card printed after October 1st is going to have a giant 1 below the card number. And it'll be like that going forward until they decide to implement the giant 2 below the card number. And we really won't know what this means until they decide to do something with it. I think everybody's immediate thought process is rotation, but other games have blocks, and not all of them use rotation. So just talking about the big three, what they do with their blocks. So we'll start with Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! What they'll do whenever they introduce a block is they'll have like 3 or 4 sets where they introduce support for these specific archetypes that Konami is trying to sell. So they don't introduce a rotation, they just have a ban list, and that keeps the game fresh because the game is focused on these specific set of decks, and then the block will change, and then a new set of decks will get focus. So Digimon could do something like that. The alternative would be to do something like Magic or like Pokemon does. What Magic does is they have blocks that happen, and then they're marked by like a super block with like the beginning of a core set. Like the core set with the year on it is typically whenever that resets, to my knowledge. And with Pokemon, you know, it'll be the same thing. You'll have like 5 to 8 sets or something, however they do it, but they'll rotate out, and then both of those games, I think, have an expanded and a modern format. Well, I know Magic does. I don't know if Pokemon does. I'm not too keen on the Pokemon card game. Play more VGC in that regard. But even then, VGC rotates out. You know, you have a new game with a new Pokedex, new set of moves, and a new gameplay mechanic like Gigantamax, Z moves, or Mega Evolution. Those things get rotated out, and it keeps the game fresh and interesting. So I don't really see myself arguing one way or the other for a rotation or against a rotation. I think however they decide to do it, it'll be fine. The one thing that does really concern me if they don't decide to do a rotation is the prices of some of the promo cards that they have. So cards like Pulsemon, you know, Pulsemon is sitting like around 50 to 60 US dollars right now, last time I checked. And if there is a reprint in the works, however, we don't know how or when we are getting the reprint of Pulsemon. For all we know, it could be a tournament prize exclusive, and it could only be distributed to a handful of players, and then the reprint isn't really a real thing because it isn't widely distributed and doesn't really make the value of Pulsemon drop low enough that players can go and pick them up. And if they don't introduce a rotation, let's say Yellow falls off in the next couple sets, and then let's say set 9, 10, maybe even 14 or 15, a new Yellow deck comes out and is super broken. Pulsemon, who will be probably a staple in Yellow for the longevity of the game, will then skyrocket in price. These $50 to $60 price tags you see on Pulsemon will now be akin to something like $120, $200. That's an estimate. And yes, that does seem high, but I've also played Yu-Gi-Oh! For multiple years, and that's a game that doesn't have rotation in it. Whenever a new block comes out, and they introduce support for a specific archetype, and then players decide that, hey, one card from these past sets is really good in this deck. Maybe, and that card being like a super rare or even higher, will then increase in value. We saw that with Fiendish Chain. When Fiendish Chain came out, it was a $5 card. My buddy Brandon and I picked up like 9 copies of Fiendish Chain a piece, held on to them, and then, you know, about 8 months later, I believe it was, they jumped up to $20 a piece because, hey, all of the sudden continuous traps that negate effects are the new meta. You need to be able to stop the effects of things that are happening, and Fiendish Chain did that. So, being a rare card from an old set, it massively spiked in price. And we see that with, like, other Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Take Harpy's Pet Dragon, for instance. It was an old Game Boy promo, or like an old video game promo. It was like $10 just because of the nostalgia. And then a Harpy deck came out, and then for a while that card was $100 minimum. So we have instances like that all of the time in Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's probably the most popular game that doesn't have a rotation. So while a lot of players will be turned off by the block icon, they'll see the block icon and go, rotation is coming, the game is ending, I think that might be a vast overreach. I really think that we should kind of wait and see what Bandai does, see how this plays out, how this shapes up with this. And we won't really know anything until we get a couple more sets with the one block icon. You know, they can't really introduce a rotation now because the only sets that are going to have it in the English format come October are going to be BT6 when we get that, and then the starter decks for Ulforce and Gallantmon. Those are the first cards that have the one block icon. So all of the promos that we have up till now and all of BT 1 through 5 will not. So whenever we get a couple more sets in, then Bandai could say something like, hey, you can't use any cards without a block. Or whenever set 2 comes out, or whenever the second block comes out, they could say, hey, cards without a block are now no longer legal. You can only use block 1 and 2 cards. And yes, this does limit the card pool. But we all saw what happened with cards like Lilithmon, right? Like, in BT1, that card was kind of garbage. And now it's like a $90 card for the alt art, and nobody knows why. So, well, I mean, everybody knows why. It's Lilithloop. But stuff like that happens. Imagine if the Lilithloop deck came out in, like, BT8 or BT9, and Lilithmon hadn't been rotated out yet. This card is now significantly older, significantly harder to obtain, and its price would have shot up even higher. So the people that are saying, yeah, no, that's ridiculous, should be the ones that are arguing for a rotation, because that, yes, it does, that is Bandai encouraging you to buy the new sets and the new products, but it is also severely limiting the secondary market. That's why we have a bunch of cards in Magic that are really expensive in, like, Modern and Legacy, but not expensive in Standard. And why we have in Pokemon, the higher rarity cards have a high price tag, but the lower rarity versions of that you play in Standard, like $4 to $5. So we get a lot of that. And yeah, those are just my overall thoughts, you know. It's kind of me rambling about the fact that Bandai is putting a number on their card now. But, yeah, no, it's pretty big news in the community, and it's a massive talking point. I've seen a bunch of other YouTubers make videos about this so far, and figured, you know, might as well hop on the train. But, yeah, if you guys want to see more content like this, like me giving my thoughts on news videos, I know that's not something I've done in the past, but leave a comment down below if you like this kind of stuff. And do like and sub to the channel if you want to see more wacky deck profiles and stuff like that in the future. But, yeah. So long, everybody. We'll see you next time.